gospel reading going through the book follows another encounter between the Lord and the Pharisees. The Lord had plenty of bad encounters with the Pharisees, meaning bad for them. They knew what to do, and they were doing wrong, on purpose, every instance, every occasion. He had just told them the parable about the vineyard, and said, the master will take the vineyard from these servants and give it to other vine dressers. And then they perceived he was talking about them correctly. And then he continues with one more parable, which is this one that we hear today about a wedding feast. So chronologically speaking, going through the history of the world, what is the wedding feast? As we all know in our theology, the wedding feast is reuniting of humanity with God. Now that we have the church here, we can have a bit of a foretaste of that reuniting of the humanity with God. We don't just have to long for it, like King Solomon did in the Song of Solomon. It is accessible, unworthy though we be, and held back by this flesh that we are. So the Lord was preparing a vineyard. He was preparing rather the wedding feast, and was inviting those who were the chosen ones then. He's obviously talking to the Jewish people back of that time. The servants who were sent to invite the guests into the wedding feast were evidently prophets. Because whenever the prophets appeared among Israel, they would be ridiculed, rejected, or killed eventually. Because the people were refusing to hear the truth. And then, when the time came, coincidentally, like it said about the vineyard, I will send my own son, they will be ashamed. Now the son is directly speaking to them, to the Pharisees, and to those who will be of the same mindset as they would be. To the people who are rejecting the invitation to the wedding feast. So then, when they killed the king's servants, meaning the prophets throughout the centuries, meaning St. John the Baptist, meaning St. John's father, Zechariah, when the soldiers were looking for John when he was a newborn, and Zechariah wouldn't say where he was, they murdered him in the temple, looking for all the children to kill that were born in Bethlehem. Killing of the prophets was almost the standard. And when the master of the wedding feast realized they were killing off the servants one after another, and eventually the same people, the same mindset, would kill his very own son, the king was angry and sent his troops and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Chronologically speaking, in the history of the world, that was specifically 70 AD. After the unsuccessful rebellion of the Jewish people, meaning the Jewish people who held on to their belief without Christ, who rejected Christ, after they started up a rebellion against the Roman Empire, the Roman army came and basically killed everyone and destroyed everything. Leveled all the cities and all the towns and villages, leveled Jerusalem, burnt it, and dismantled the Temple of Solomon down to the foundation. Then the king said to his servants, who are then the servants, chronologically speaking? The first wave of the servants are the apostles. The next wave are all the disciples, all of the bishops, priests, all of the early church, sending them out into the thoroughfares. As it says in some translations, the highways, hedges, anywhere. Find anybody and invite them to the marriage feast, as many as you find. Fast forward 2,000 years, here we are. And those servants went out into the streets and gathered whoever they could find, both bad and good. Well, that's a puzzling phrase, bad and good. when all of us, brothers and sisters, heeded the call given to us by some new servants of the Lord, here they are probably in the altar, right? Were we good or bad? Anybody can ask themselves that question. If they say completely good, they are deluded, of course. If they say completely bad, they are exaggerating in unnecessary fake humility. If we think about it, brothers and sisters, we are good and bad. Going by the example of the saints, it's better for the sake of our humility and sober-mindedness to think about the bad, not so we can dwell on it in some kind of a hopeless, despondent, godless, faithless, masochistic way, but so we can be humble, reject it, renounce it, confess it, and get rid of it, the bad. That, in one instance, is the preparation of the wedding garment that this one fella came into the wedding without. The master saw him and said, "Friend, how did you come in here without a wedding garment?" We know even in our worldly, fleshly way, we cannot show up for some fancy feast, for a wedding celebration, in just anything. We have to show up in a special wedding garment, dress up nicely, outwardly speaking. So, as we renounce the bad and turn to the good, as we ourselves ontologically drift from being bad to being good, to put it very simply, we keep weaving our wedding garment, brothers and sisters, from the virtues that we are now supposed to engage in, the ascetic struggle that we are supposed to engage in, that the church ever so clearly gives us in a book, metaphorically speaking, on a silver platter. We just have to get it done. And if we think about it to the innermost depth of this whole concept, what is my wedding garment going to be made of? Let us not slip into the unnecessary debate about whether my wedding garment can be made up of my good works. Our faith reflects our good works. And if you really get to the bottom of it, brothers and sisters, the wedding garment that we are going to need to enter that wedding feast is woven from the fabric of love. Because the Lord said, the main two commandments are, love your God and love your neighbor as yourself. If we start from there, virtues will follow and the fabric of the garment will be composed, and we can, having already answered the call, we can enter that wedding feast with a proper wedding garment.